of 2010, and that week that I was there, I bought a house, and I moved my family up from Canada to Seattle, and I started working at Microsoft in January of 2011. And and I have to say that, you know, when I joined Microsoft in January 2011, the next 11 months was absolute hell. It was being an entrepreneur inside a big company again. I had 4 different managers, and I thought, like, what am I doing? Like, why does this keep happening to me inside of a big company? And then I started to realize that I need to start to think about, how do I add value inside a company? How do I go in a company where everyone around me is smarter than me? Where, you know, you go into a company like Microsoft and you have PhDs from Cornell and you know, Stanford and all the, you know, Princeton, like all these people were super smart, MBAs from all over the world, and then there's me. And I'm surrounded by all these people, and I'm thinking, like, what can I do to really help this company? And I thought about it, and I thought about it. I'm an angel investor. I had over 40 investments at one particular time. And I was thinking about, you know, what is going on? Like, all my friends keep coming to me, and one of the things, the constant was, why are you still at Microsoft? What are you doing there? And then I realized, I know exactly why I'm here. I'm here because we have a living founder who's dedicated his life to making the world better. And I want to figure out a way to change, to do the same thing with the entrepreneur community. And so, you know, because this is the space that I know. And here's the issue that Microsoft has in this space. We miss the open source movement. We miss this movement. So people always ask, you know, why is Microsoft, you know, what happened to tablets, what happened to phones, you know, what's the CEO doing? It's not the CEO, it was just it's a cultural thing inside the company. We have this business model, and we missed this massive movement of open source. And, you know, in the process of missing that, we sort of missed the mobile space. Android came in and filled a hole that we left behind. And it sort of led to an awakening inside the company that you know, many people don't recognize it. We had this thing where, you know, the executive leadership all throughout the company started seeing this happen. And so, you know, things like, we opened up the first open source cloud on an international structure called Mooncake in China. We created this, we made Azure, which is our cloud, and made it purely open source friendly. We had a GitHub partnership. You know, we did a lot of things that were sort of really interesting, but that were counter to Microsoft, which is really embracing open source. And then, you know, I thought, okay, with all this movement going on, with us embracing open source, the startup community still doesn't see it. Because you know what's happening? In the startup community, entrepreneurs are starting at a much earlier age than they used to, right? People are not going to get their MBA to become an entrepreneur. Sometimes they're actually starting in high school. And they're going to these startup hackathons. They're going to, you know, startup weekends. They're doing all these various events, and they're congregating. And they're all developing in the stacks that they understand, which is really open source stacks. You know, they're using Node.js, they're using all these things that, and Microsoft, we're living in this parallel universe where we have some amazing products that a lot of these startups were not using. And so perception has changed. So perception varies in different places in the world. In some places, Microsoft is loved. In other places, you know, we're not as relevant as we'd like to be in the startup space. And so, you know, I started to put together a very small team, and I started to say, you know, in this company, in order to get things done, we need to think big, but we need to act small. We need to create something that will start a movement inside the company. So what I did was I started a little incubation fund. And the idea was, it was called the Bing Fund. And the idea was that we would go in and we would provide what entrepreneurs care about. As an entrepreneur, what would I want from Microsoft is what I was thinking as we built this program. Well, the first thing I want is, you know, what are the biggest strengths the company has? Access to customers. Microsoft has the largest footprint in the enterprise. We have some of the biggest customers in the world. How can Microsoft help a startup get access to customers? That was one thing that we were thinking of. You know, the other thing we were thinking of is awareness. And then also just being accessible. We have some of the smartest people in the world in various areas. Things like wearable technology, gaming, cloud, Internet of Things, like all of these things we have experts in. So we wanted to give access to those people, to entrepreneurs. So we created this program called the Bing Fund, where what we would do is we would make small seed investments in companies. And then, you know, the reason we made the seed investment was we could have bought the companies. It didn't matter. There's so much money in the bank, it doesn't make a difference. But we wanted to make a small seed investment to demonstrate we're putting skin in the game. And then we want to bring on other partners. Because it's part of the startup ecosystem. There's startups and entrepreneurs, but there's also VCs and angels. And we wanted to sort of bring them along as well and say, look, we don't care about the return as much as you do. We're happy to have you participate in our deal flow. We just want to help these companies be great. And this was a pilot program that we ran. And then there was other teams within Microsoft. There was a guy in India, like another CEO such as myself, that went off and created an accelerator in Bangalore. There was a person in Israel that did the same thing. The Israel Accelerator started about 14 months ago. And all of these teams were doing this, in parallel, but there was no clear sort of value proposition. There was no clear, as Microsoft does, we have so many different brands, many of which you don't know. And we weren't being very clear to the startup ecosystem as to who we are and what we do and why should you care. And so we all got together in the last little while. We all came together as one team. They all joined my team essentially, and we then created Microsoft Ventures. And we said, what is Microsoft Ventures and why are we here? And basically, we created Microsoft Ventures to be the best destination. Our goal, our North Star, is to create it as the best destination for entrepreneurs everywhere to want to partner with us. And when we think about that, we're thinking about, we have these accelerators running around the world currently. I don't know if you know this, but we have accelerators in Israel, we have one in Beijing, we have one in India. We just announced one in London. We announced one recently in Berlin that's going to open in November. We have one in Paris. And then we have this really cool network of accelerators coming up in Brazil, starting in Sao Paulo and Rio. And the purpose of these accelerators is to help take companies, help take entrepreneurs with their ideas and take them through a very vigorous program. In some cases, the program varies because every ecosystem is different. But to give you an idea, in the last 14 months, we've had roughly 120 companies come through our program as a pilot. 120 companies. It's not a lot when you think about Microsoft as such a gigantic corporation, but we really wanted to focus. So we had 120 companies come through. We've had 85% of these companies got funded, which is an unbelievable number when you think about these early stage companies who typically don't get funding. Many of them blow up. 85% got funded. 20% have hit Series A, and it continues to grow. 7, as of this morning, have been acquired. There was just another acquisition today announced in India. One of them was acquired by Yahoo. One of them was acquired by Microsoft. The rest were acquired by other people. But we're having these interesting things going on with these companies for the last year. And now that we're in our second year, we're opening up other accelerators around the world. And what we're going to do is go back to the 120 companies that we incubated last year. We're going to pick a few, and we're really going to help them grow them. And the way we're going to do this is we're building a program where we can connect our startups to our customers. Think about this for a second. Every major enterprise company is looking to get access to innovation, early stage tech companies, startups, whatever. They're trying to get into these ecosystems. Microsoft has these companies as customers, and they're our partners. They actually love working with us, and we have entrepreneurs out there who really care about one thing. They don't care about money. The real entrepreneurs really care about their customers. They care about solving big problems for their customers. That's what they want to do. And we want to help those entrepreneurs connect to those customers. And we're doing that with our accelerator program. And this has been received really well in the areas that we're in currently. And so Microsoft Ventures now has, we have over 200 accelerator and incubator partners around the world. We have our programs that we're building for everything from student entrepreneurship, because we believe that entrepreneurship starts earlier than university. Personally, I believe that university is a dying institution. I think that in many ways, if you're going to university, you go there to become a radiologist, but you may not go there to get an MBA. I think that if you go through a 4-month accelerator, you will learn more in a 4-month accelerator than you will doing a 4-year program as an MBA. And so we're doing these programs for student entrepreneurship. Then we have our accelerators in the cities that I mentioned. We have we're announcing Brazil. Well, we already announced Brazil that we're doing this, but they're opening soon. They're opening later this year. The leader of Brazil is here. Franklin, just stand up for a second. This is Franklin Luces. If anyone wants to talk about Brazil and what we're doing with Microsoft Ventures, this is the guy to talk to. And then we also have this thing where we're seed funding. We're funding ourselves. In Brazil, there's a partnership with a fund that's being set up there as well. But we are funding. Microsoft is funding companies. And the way we're funding is we're funding off the balance sheet. Everyone asks, like, how big is your fund? And I say, well, how much money does Microsoft have in the bank? I mean, it's a lot. But we're not funding with, money in the bank just for the sake of ROI. That's not what we're looking for. What we're looking to do is we'll fund the companies and we'll spend time with them. So our funding is resource dependent. It's my team focusing on the companies that we're working with. So, if you ask me, what is the goal of this? Why are you doing this? I'll tell you, going back to what I said before, the perception of Microsoft is, what's happening inside the company. The company is probably one of the most giving companies in the world. It started with our founder, who's the most giving person in the world, We have this weird perception issue. We're living in this kind of world where, the startup ecosystem needs to see us as a partner. And we want to create a program as a partner, as a true partner to the startup ecosystem. And that is why we're doing this. That is fundamentally the number one reason we're doing this, is to create this destination for entrepreneurs that is a true partnership that will help light them up and help blow them up into great successes. So that's sort of the summary, kind of. I think that was a summary. How long was that? That was a 25-minute summary. Okay. So does anyone have any questions? Yes.
I mean, you sold Voodoo, and I don't know if you can disclose this information, but how much they paid for it?
Well, Rodrigo, that's a good question. So the question was, how much did Hewlett Packard pay for Voodoo? Hewlett Packard paid a lot for Voodoo. But, the thing is, I spent basically 2 years doing nothing after the acquisition was done, and after I spent maybe a few months working at HP, and I realized that as you go from early entrepreneur to later in life, you realize that the money is obviously not important, right? I think and your motivations change for why you do things. When I first started Voodoo, it was very selfish reasons why I started it. It wasn't like I had this big vision that I wanted to create the luxury computing, for whatever. It wasn't. That's a bunch of crap. I did it because I wanted to buy a nice car. Totally wrong motivation to have when you're building a company. Later on in life, my dad died of cancer. He died, within a 3-month span. We found out in November he had cancer. He died in January. This was in 2000. And at that time, I had no idea, what GMB was. GMB is the type of tumor that he had, or GBM or GMB. GBM, sorry. I had no idea what it was, but I couldn't talk to radiologists. You couldn't talk to doctors. You couldn't talk to anybody to figure out what this tumor was and how can he be treated or anything. He died in 3 months. Many years later, I met a great friend. His name is Dr. Deepak Kora. At the time, he was a resident in school, and together we came together and we started a company called Bright Squid, which is really about taking medical data and making it social for doctors, radiologists, medical professionals to share cases and annotations over borders and over silos, so that they can help people like me 10 years earlier, or 7 years earlier when we started it, to figure out, if my dad is dying of a GBM, and there's someone in India who has one, or somewhere else in the world, and they're being treated, and their tumor is regressing, what does that mean? Access to information has never been better, and the motivation for me to do that was different, right? So I guess to answer your question, it doesn't matter, right? It's just it was a good one. So yes.
You said you have been an angel investor in more or less 40
Yeah.
companies. And can you tell us a little bit if you invested only in US companies, and more or less how was the ratio of success failure? Because our region, Latin America and the Caribbean, has an incredible aversion to risk, which makes it so different to the environment in the US. So as an angel investor, which was your zero stress figure in which understood you could lose that money and be okay, and you would keep investing, and more or less your track record?
Yeah, you know, as an investor, you tend to learn from your failures and many investors don't learn from their failures, and they make the same stupid mistakes every time. I have had I've had good success in energy, you know, oil and gas, energy, coal, things like that. I've had, and in terms of where I've invested, also tech. Obviously, I've invested a lot in tech, in healthcare, gaming, you know, multiple areas in tech. But in terms of geographically, it's an interesting question that you ask, because I spent a lot of time investing in China at one point, and I was doing really well for about 2 years, and then you know, everything turned into dust. I mean, it's really difficult to invest outside of areas that you know. In the U.S., it's very easy to invest. The terms are, you know, the ecosystems are way more mature, so the terms are very entrepreneur friendly. They're investor friendly. They're simple to understand. You can tell whether it's real or not real. In China, I now know, you know, if you're investing in an organic milk farm somewhere in Beijing, you're probably making a mistake. And you know, so I did a lot of that stuff too, and then I realized that you really need to understand the ecosystem. What's interesting thing when you said in Brazil people are very risk averse, you know, I hear you have to know how to do business in Brazil to do business in Brazil, right? And I feel that the companies that are most interesting are the ones that are solving local problems that really can be scalable to global problems, right? So and I'm going to say that again, the companies that are solving local problems, and here's why I'm saying this. We went to India recently to do a tour of the startup ecosystem. Went to Mumbai, went to Hyderabad, went to Bangalore. And we were really disappointed because, you know, here's the bottom line. We have all these entrepreneurs who are super talented. They're great engineers, and they're developing products that are just basically Me Too copies of what's happening in the US for the US. So they're trying to create startups for a market they don't understand and customers they don't understand because they saw someone else do it. And as a result of that, the deal flow is not that great. Angels are taking way too much equity at the beginning. The entrepreneurs are left very little, and all they want to do is sell. They just want to do it for the money. Then I was looking at some of the deals that are coming through the Microsoft Ventures program in Brazil, and I saw some really interesting ones. We saw a company that is, well, I don't know if I can talk about it, but we saw a company that's doing something in agri-tech, which is really interesting, and it's a space that we have expertise in at Microsoft. And it's a space that if we can solve this problem in Brazil at a smaller scale, we can take this to China, we can help take it to, you know, every other place. We can take it to India, we can take it to Seattle, you know, everywhere in the world we can take this thing because of our Microsoft Ventures platform. And so I'm really interested in the companies that really understand what the local problem is and are solving those local problems, and then we'll make investments in those. Yes?
Given that Microsoft Ventures doesn't have financial returns as its primary motivation, do your criteria for selection for companies differ, or are they principally the same market, product, team? Across those three, how are they different?
Yeah, so Microsoft is a company that has a lot of assets across from entertainment, gaming to, you know, cloud services, whatever, right? Somebody asked me, are you doing this for, you know, to look at the strategic, you know, these strategic investments for Microsoft? Are you looking at, you know, changing Microsoft's strategy? And I would say that, you know, the startup space is very unique. There's never been a time in our history where you can take 3 to 5 people, put them in a room, and disrupt a massive company with a small piece of technology that comes up. And so we have themes that we look for, first of all. So we look at what can we do as Microsoft to really help these companies grow. So we have themes. So we pick themes like, for example, Internet of Things. Or sorry about that. That's my stopwatch. Which I'll stop. Okay, so we have themes like, you know, Internet of Things and gaming, and you know, we're doing things like rural and urban informatics, stuff like that we look at that we can add value to. But really, no, we look at the team. You know, is there a team? Do they have a prototype, and do they have some customer data? Have they, do they have that? And if they have that, then, and we really like what they're doing, then we'll bring them into our program. So remember, our investments are just part of our program. The accelerator is probably the biggest part of our program, and our accelerators, we typically do not take equity when we put companies into our accelerators. Into the Microsoft Ventures accelerators, we do not take equity at all. We just want to help build great companies. Because we believe that if we help build great companies, they will become partners of Microsoft long term, and they will help change the perception of us in the world and in the startup space. Yeah. Yes? So if we don't take equity in these companies, how do we enumerate our team? Well, that's a good question. So let me put it to you this way. If we are able to create the next big thing, right, as a partner of Microsoft's, the next Pinterest, the next Instagram, the next whatever company coming out of our accelerators, then that is a big goal. That is a big thing that will change, the company, and it will also help change the culture inside the company, be more entrepreneurial. There's a lot of things that we're doing in regards to that. Like if we do that will create a massive halo for us. Long-term view of this is that we will have an external fund, but we don't like to talk about what we're going to do, right? What we really need to think about is how do we help partner with other VCs and angels first of all. If we went around and just wrote a bunch of checks and did it for an ROI, Microsoft has $80 billion in the bank. We have money in places where we cannot remove from countries, locked in countries. They cannot take cash out of these countries. We could easily invest and throw money around all over the place. But that is the wrong approach, because to me, I believe that the right approach is to put in some skin in the game, and then to partner with other angels and VCs and let them participate on the upside, because that's what they care about. They care about return on their equity. We care about building partnerships and changing perception, and they're a big part of the ecosystem as well. So I mean, that should give you an idea of why we're doing it. But I think how we remunerate our team. Well, our team gets paid, and we get paid very well to work at Microsoft. So yes. Oh, and by the way, just one more thing. We have many entrepreneurs inside of our team. So Franklin is a former entrepreneur. We have CEO in residence in every one of our accelerators. There are former CEOs that have built and sold companies that have been there and done that. They've already made it, and now they just want to go and do something more profound and really help to build something bigger than themselves. So I know it sounds kind of whatever, but it really is. That really is what it is. This team is all about that, and that's what makes it super interesting. So. And don't think that I don't want to have an external fund and make a return on equity eventually. Eventually, perhaps.
Hey, Rahul,
that's the yeah.
It might be worth differentiating between the fund and the accelerator, because we do make seed investments.
Well, that's true. Okay, so it's a good point. So for example, in our accelerators, we do not take equity, but we're not putting any money in. In our fund, like our seed fund, when we put money into the company, we do take a convertible note. But the convertible note is super friendly terms, and it's very, very friendly terms. It's not we're not taking, it's not a convertible into equity. It's basically, it converts into equity based on the next round of financing. So, yeah. Yes.
Okay. No, I know we're running out of time, so let's make this last one. It sounds as if, with the scale of your program, the ambitions of the program, and the way that you interact, it's almost as if you are what government could be in a good side, in a good way. How do you work with government in the different countries that you're in on the accelerators and everything else? Is it feasible? Is it workable? You go from that as a base? I mean, how's your interaction with government? Because it sounds like, well, wouldn't it be great if we had as much money as we need and we don't have to get returns on it? Isn't that kind of what the government should be doing?
Every ecosystem is different, but I absolutely agree with you. The government is, should be, and some governments are way more forward-thinking than others. In Brazil, for example, the government is way more forward-thinking than they are in other countries. In Brazil, they have a program where they're investing $100,000 in these startups for wages for the first year, right? And in South Africa, they're doing something somewhat similar, where they're remunerating us for the companies that we're helping to build. It's all about job creation. Every country is different, but you're absolutely right. governments should be setting up spaces, ecosystems, startup ecosystems in real estate, where they give real estate away to startups. They give real estate away to the community at large that's going to sort of help build these job centers up. They should be doing this. They should be doing that, and they should be bringing in investment.
But as you stand right now, they're not part of the 200 accelerator partners that you have.
Actually, no. Government is very much a part of what we do, all over the world. But like I said, every ecosystem is different. So every engagement we have with the government is different. But you can imagine Microsoft is super connected, and one of our things is our national plan with the government, and so every government we engage with.
China is a great example of that as well.
Yeah. So, want to touch on that, or?
Yeah. So the model is that if you want to go after the startup ecosystem, you have to be in the right space, right? You've got to be in the right part of town. You've got to be right where the entrepreneurs are. And usually, real estate is one of the largest barriers to entry. Good real estate in the right place, super hard. The other aspect of it is maturing the ecosystem. So a lot of the time, governments will give away grants which don't create good entrepreneurs. It creates good long-term research, but it doesn't create good entrepreneurs. So working with that ecosystem to actually get the right space, and then kind of turn the grants into actual investments and tracking it and creating that force in the market is super important. So China is an example where we're doing that. Yeah.
Another example is Brazil, because Microsoft is official partner from the Startup Brazil program, because we won the bid together with the other 8 business accelerators. So we partner and work together with the government to force innovation and entrepreneurship in the country, especially in Brazil.
Okay. Don't forget about Brazil.
Gotta talk about Brazil today.
All right. Well, thank you very much. If you have any other questions, I'll be around somewhere.